Welcome to Unplanned and Untold, a podcast that dives into the real-life, unexpected twists of facing an unplanned pregnancy in college. Join us as we listen to the unplanned and untold stories of those who have overcome the odds in order to achieve their goals. Welcome back to another episode of Unplanned and Untold. I'm your host, Caitlin Willing, and today I have an amazing guest on the podcast for you. She actually was one of our very first community student moms at our Auburn hub, and then she interned for us, graduated from Auburn University, went on to get her master's degree at UAB, and she is now Baby Steps Director of National Marketing. It is a great privilege and pleasure to introduce you to Charlton Jones. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Caitlin, if you keep talking a girl up like that, we are just going to have a big head over here.
Everywhere you go, I feel like I should introduce you to the room. Wouldn't that be so fun?
It would be weird, actually. It would be like, who is this girl?
Man, oh my gosh. Well, I think it is so important for our listeners to really get a full circle glimpse. It's almost like a little teaser for them to understand, oh, snap. She not only was a Baby Step student mom, she then interned for them, graduated, got her master's. Like, she's a superhero. And I hope that makes them want to listen to this story even more.
Yeah, I would love that. If you listen to my story, that would be cool. Please stay tuned.
Oh, well, you have an amazing story, and I'm so excited to dig in. And I really would love to take it all the way back to, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I am originally from Bainbridge, Georgia. It's a very, very small town, roughly about 10,000 people at the time, though I think it's grown since then. And it's basically in the corner of like Georgia where Alabama and Florida meet.
Okay.
So I always say we were always 20 minutes from the Florida line and 30 minutes from the Alabama line.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it made beach trips really easy, but I had like a very involved family. Like, I was really close with my parents. I feel like growing up, we always went on family trips and did vacations and different things like that. And but the thing about my parents though is they're a little bit, they're going to kill me for saying this. They're a little bit older than parents.
They're seasoned.
Like other people my age. So I'm about to be 27 at this point. And my parents, my dad is in his early 70s and my mom is in her early 60s.
Okay.
So I won't give specific numbers so
they probably would appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it does. That gives us more of a context into the type of family atmosphere that you're growing up in.
Yeah, like very, very old school. Like I relate a lot to people that are older than me and, people that are even 10, 20 years older than me because like I grew up with parents that were essentially like when they were growing up, that they were the same age as my parents. So,
exactly.
I had a little bit more of that old school mindset.
And I love that. I do agree with you. When I met you for the first time, I'm like, she's an old soul. Like, and I can vibe with that.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody looked at me and was like, you are so mature for your age when I was growing up. Oh my gosh.
Well, that having older parents, and then when you add an unplanned pregnancy on top of that, a lot of these women we talk to, they also gravitate towards that. Man, you're so mature, and it's because you had to step up.
So we had to. We had no choice.
No choice. You have no choice than to grow up and, move forward with life. And it's definitely a compliment. I would rather that. I'd rather somebody say, you've got an old soul than, man, you act like a child.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So we know you graduated from Auburn, but was Auburn really the school you always wanted to go to? Was it a dream?
Yeah. So it really kind of actually wasn't. So when I was in high school at the time, the thought was I was going to go into journalism. And so I was actually really interested in going to the University of Florida. I was going to be a Gator. Still blue and orange, but
different, a way different orange,
way different. And so they had a really good journalism program at the time, and I was like very interested in going there. But my mom was like, you need to tour other schools, you need to keep your options open, you need to kind of take a look around. And I'm very much the kind of person, like when I'm set on something, I'm set. Like that's how it's going to be. That's what
Yeah.
I'm going to do. And so in my brain, I was like, I'll entertain this, but no, I'm going to the University of Florida. And so,
Wow.
of course, she bamboozled me and she took me to Auburn
Young,
on my
impressionable
very
you.
first. Yeah, she took me to Auburn on my very first college tour. And of course, like I'm looking around, I'm like, it's so beautiful here. I love it. It feels like home.
It's like
And
college Disneyland.
yeah, it's just such a great, it has that
Yes.
small town feel, which I was
Mhm.
used to from
Right.
growing up in a small town, but it had more opportunity, it had more things available
Yeah.
than your traditional small town. And because it really isn't a small town,
It's really not when
but
you
it
really
has
look
that
at it,
feel.
but it feels
Yeah.
it.
And so that just sold me on it because I was not going to be a fan of going to a large town, large city, if you will,
Absolutely.
for college. So yeah, I quickly changed plans, went into poultry science. Can you believe it?
Wait,
I don't
hold
think you
on.
know about that
I have
about me.
no idea. Poultry science?
Poultry
What?
science. So
Like
here was the
chickens? Like,
workaround.
is this what
Yes,
you're
like chickens. Yes. So fun fact, we'll detour on my unplanned pregnancy story for this. So basically I had changed my mind by the time I had gone to Auburn and was
right?
like, I want to be a pharmacist.
Okay.
So I figured out that there were only really like three difference, three classes difference in between like going into pre-pharmacy and
Okay.
going into poultry science. And
Okay.
poultry science had a lot more scholarship opportunities available.
Gotcha.
And the only differences were, the ag classes. And
Sure.
so I was like, I'm going to get that scholarship money
Yeah.
and I'm going to go in under poultry science and then I'll change my major later on
Sure.
and go into pharmacy. But that also very quickly changed because I took my first science class like freshman year, first semester.
Yep.
And I very much was like, okay, this is different
Not
than
it.
high school science.
It's the weed out classes, I
It is.
swear. They put you in these weed out
Well,
classes and
and
you're
and
done.
most people go in and they take like biology level one.
Right.
No, the
What'd you
science
take?
that I took was like it was like a level three. I can't even remember
Like an
anymore, but it,
anatomy
it
type
was like a
class?
no, it was like a level three something. So
Oh
like
my gosh.
what would have been not the first, not the second, but the third science class anybody else would have taken. I took as my level one. And so I was
No.
like, okay, great. Barely passed this.
Right, right. So
So
you switched your major up
I did. I
eventually.
switched my
Yeah.
major and I switched to communication just
Okay.
as a filler of like, we'll just keep this until we figure out what we want to do. Took a class and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. If you can't tell, I love talking. So I just was really enthralled with the idea of like the theory behind communicating and why
Right.
people speak in particular ways and mannerisms and stuff like that. So it just really intrigued me and I stuck with it.
That is awesome. And when you joined, when you came onto campus, did you join
Mhm.
clubs? Did you join sororities? Like,
Yeah,
how
I
involved were
was
you?
I was really involved. So
Okay.
I was in a sorority,
Okay.
and I was in the Auburn University Singers, the Auburn Gospel Choir. I was in SGA. I was in Charge, which is if I think it's not on every campus. So if you don't know about it, it's like a health fitness club for women. So I was in a bunch of stuff and I held like leadership positions in different groups and things like that. So I was very like I was spread around. I had my toes kind of in
I
everything.
love that though. That's like the best type of college experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the
It
lay of the land.
it was really fun too because I was like, okay, like if these people are busy, I have friends over here I can kind of
Yeah.
call on. And I had different social groups where I kind of fit myself into.
Right. Absolutely. So we know why you're on the podcast. We all
Right.
know
Shocker.
somewhere along the lines,
Right.
you find out you're pregnant.
I do.
So what year were you? And take me
Yeah.
back to how did you find out? What was life like?
Yeah. So I was a junior at the time
Okay.
and I say that it was fall semester, but because I was very involved and because I was very interested in what I was doing in school, I always took extra classes. So I was
Gotcha.
actually a semester ahead.
Okay. Of
So
course.
I was technically, even though it's like first semester junior year, I'm technically in my second semester of
Gotcha.
junior year. And so I am at this point, I think I mentioned this on, our behind the lines, behind the blue lines chat.
Yes.
I'm very regular when it comes to my time of the month. And so at this point, I'm a couple days late and I'm kind of
Gotcha.
like, okay, I have never been more than, 2 days, 1 to 2 days late before. I'm very concerned now that something might be
Something's
going on.
happening.
Something's happening. And so I tell my boyfriend at the time, now he's my husband. But I tell him and he's, of course he's like, you're fine. You're good.
Fine.
Like if you're
Everything's fine.
concerned, I'll get a test for you. You
Oh
can
my
take it and we'll,
gosh.
we'll be
What a
good.
champion. Wait, he got the
He
test for
he got
you?
the test. Yeah,
Stop
because I
it.
was like,
Oh
I was
my
still
God.
embarrassed to buy tampons. Okay.
Sure, absolutely. Now we have our husbands buying tampons.
Right. But yeah, he went
Dang,
and got the
wow.
test.
Snaps to you, Seth.
He's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Let me
Wow.
just say before we go any further, like and I hope he hears this and
Hmm.
knows how much I love him, but
Yeah.
he is truly one of the best. He is one of a kind. He is so great. And you will see that throughout this story for sure. I found a
Yes.
good one
You found a
and I
good
locked him in with a
one.
baby.
Now, forever.
Forever. He's 9.
Oh my gosh. So how long had y'all been together before you thought you were pregnant?
So that's the thing. We'd been together for probably like 4 months,
Oh my God.
maybe 5 at this
Oh
point.
my
So we were
God.
still very new into a relationship.
Which is wild. But every story we hear, there's no rhyme or reason to the length of the relationship and whether or not the
Right.
man's going to stay. That is what I figured out a
Mm-hmm.
long time ago because we've got men like Seth. You've been in it for a very short time, but he
Mm-hmm.
stays and he wants to, work this out,
Yes.
raise this baby, marry you, all the things. You've got stories like mine and a couple others where I've been with the guy for years and he's
Right.
like, I'm
And
out.
he's like,
Like, no
bye.
way. Bye.
Yeah. No,
So
Seth
really,
he was very, and at this point too, before we find out that I'm pregnant, we're already talking about like being engaged in the next few months, like
sure.
getting married, like a life together. So he was in it with me no matter what. It
Right.
wasn't just talk for him, which I
Right.
loved. So
Now that
how
you
we
hear everyone
found out,
else.
yes. So to kind of go back, how we found out though, he got the test. And so I meet him at his work
My
at
God.
the time. Yeah, oh gosh. I think about the details and I'm like, wow.
My
So
God.
I meet him at his work and I kind of go to the bathroom and I take the test and I come back out and I take it and I sit it down on his desk face down. Now there's nobody else. Let me clarify this. Nobody else in
Yeah.
his work in the store at the time. He
He's
works at
not
a
working in a
mattress store in town.
cubicle with like 20 men
No,
everywhere.
it's not like,
Private.
Sharon's in the next
Yeah,
5 feet over listening in
that
to
would
us
be a
finding out we're
story.
pregnant. There is nobody else here at this point
Okay.
in time.
Good to know.
Just to clarify that.
Yes.
So we take the test and we sit it down and he's kind of, I'm like shaking with
I bet.
nerves. I'm like
Oh my God.
building it up in my brain and gosh, he's again so great. He's just holding my hands and he's like, look, whatever that says, like I'm in it. I'm here for you. If it's positive, we're gonna get through this. Like I am happy I'll pick up another job. Like I'll do whatever I can. I will provide for you and this baby. Like you will finish school, whatever you want to do. Like I'm here to help you do it.
Wow.
And of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. But like, I can't.
But still, this could be a
Right.
human.
Right. So I'm freaking out. So we kind of like wait the full time. And he essentially is like, okay, do you want me to look at it or do you want to look at it? Like, do you want to know first or do you want me to know first? And I think about it for a second and I'm like, I want you to know. And I think it was because I just couldn't, there was something about the idea of like, I felt like if he looked at it first, right?
Right.
Like if he saw it first, I could almost take another second for myself
Right.
and just kind of figure out my feelings.
Yeah.
And so he looks at it and I had told him, of course, I'm like, don't have any emotion. Like
Don't tell me.
don't
Show
try
your
to let
face.
me know, like don't just look at it and then tell me exactly what it is. And so he picks up the test off the desk and I don't think that he thought that it was going to be positive
Right.
because his hand kind of just like instantly, I mean, it covers his mouth and he's just kind of trying to like keep a reaction in. And in that moment, like, I know,
you knew.
I know it says positive.
Yeah.
And I know that like I'm pregnant.
Mm. So from there, do you carry out this conversation in the middle of his work, or is that like a timeout moment? We need to like gather our feelings and thoughts and come back and talk about this.
So, of course, I mean, I know. And at that point, I just start bawling, crying
Hmm.
because I'm terrified. Like,
Yeah.
here I am. I'm this student I love my college life
Yeah.
and everything I'm experiencing. And I'm very involved. I love the things that I'm doing. And I have this, don't we all? Like, I have this plan
Right.
for the future of we're going to get married or engaged in the next couple of months. And then I'm going to graduate and then you're going to graduate. Then we're going to get married. And then, and then the list goes on. Right.
Sure.
And that, of course, is now changing. And I don't know what's going to happen for the future.
Right.
And so I'm very much in this moment, like mourning the loss of the life that I knew
Absolutely.
because I'm working through, okay, like you can't be in AU singers anymore. And I don't know like what your sorority is gonna think, but maybe they'll kick you out, or
Yeah.
maybe like I'm just walking through everything and I'm like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this anymore. And it all just in that moment it hits me, and that's what breaks me down.
Absolutely. I think that's a common thread we hear among these stories is what now? And the fear
Mm-hmm.
of the unknown, and
Yeah,
nothing quite changes your life so drastically than knowing you're about to bring another human into this world.
absolutely.
And with somebody that you've only been with, for a short amount of time, like y'all are still
Yeah.
figuring each other out.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's another layer to add to this is
Absolutely.
we've got to still figure each other out, plus this baby, plus school. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously the parental aspect of this is I know y'all are both in college, but do you end up telling your parents, and what is their reaction?
Yeah, so my parents, it's kind of funny because we were very serious for a very short amount of time being
Right.
together. And so we call my parents and I make him be on the call with me
Of
because
course.
I'm like,
You
I
did this to
can't do
me.
it by myself. You did this
You,
too. You've got to be here. Like,
you
this
must.
isn't just on me.
I love that though. That's great.
And of course, he's so supportive. He's like, okay, sure, whatever
Sure.
you
Oh my
need.
gosh. This man's not
And
afraid of anything. I love it.
he's not. He's really not. He's like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, whatever's happening, it's happening.
Oh.
And so I call my parents. And so I can't remember if my mom or my dad answered. I think it was my mom. And I'm like, hey, like, is dad there? And she's like, why? And I'm like, can you just go sit with him, please? And so my parents like go sit together and they tell me this later, but they tell me at that time when I call them that they think we're going to be like, we're engaged. And
Kind
little
of,
did
sort of,
they
not
know.
really, mom and dad.
So sorry to disappoint you. That
We
is
skipped a
not the
step.
conversation at hand.
We went from step 1 to 4.
Right, right. We skipped a couple of steps here.
Yep.
So we basically tell them, and my mom was my dad was instantly like, okay, congrats. And my mom is just like, okay, like, what do you want to do? And I'm
Right.
like, we're going to keep the baby. Like, we're going to figure it out. And
Right.
she's like, okay,
All
like,
right.
we'll support whatever you want to do. And I'm like,
Yep.
yep, this is what I want to do. And so
Absolutely.
we just were like, this is what's happening.
You just move forward with it.
Yeah.
You figure it out. And that's the beauty of experiencing an unplanned pregnancy is you learn to roll with the punches in a way that you
Mm-hmm.
probably have never had to before.
Yeah.
Because like you said before, you've had a plan. All of a sudden that plan is detoured.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You
Right.
literally can only see the step in front of you and
Absolutely.
trusting that, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. But there's a lot of internal working that happens, like
Mm-hmm.
character development when you're experiencing something like that. So
Yeah.
how do you break it to all of these friend groups? Because you are very involved. And so it seems like there are a lot of people who are either going to find out or you're going to have to tell.
So I actually kind of don't. That's the funny thing about
You
my
ghost them.
experience.
Do you ghost
I
them?
I don't ghost them,
Okay.
but I kind of pretend.
Okay.
So because I and this kind of goes back to like how I was raised, like I had those older parents. And
Right.
so I grew up with a very old school mindset and thought like this is so shameful. Like
Right.
I was very emotionally hard on myself, like
Mm-hmm.
harder, honestly, probably than anyone else.
Absolutely.
And I think Seth saw that in me. And so he very much so was like the emotional support that I needed at a lot of
Mhm.
times. But I really, really like took it on myself of like, this is something to be embarrassed about. This is
Right.
so shameful. Like, I can't believe you did this. Like you've kind of ruined everything at this point,
Mm.
that kind of thing. And so I there is immediately after I found out, okay, there's one person that I tell because I find out in between classes. Like I've left school. This is the
You
story.
set yourself up, girl.
So I've left school and I go find out and I kind of like have an hour or so and I do all my crying. I like compose myself and then I've
Right.
got to go back to
Oh
class.
my
I've
gosh.
got, an AU singers class. And so
Right.
we're waiting outside for class to start. And, all of us would kind of sit in the halls and line the hallway and wait outside the choir room until it was time for us to go in.
Yeah.
And so, of course, like you've just found out you're pregnant. Like you're not like happy go lucky skipping into
Right.
class, like, hey guys, what's up?
You're not you.
And
You.
right. And so
Yeah.
one of my friends can kind of tell, and they are basically like, hey, what's going on? I'm just kind of like, no, like we're good. And they're like really kind of pushing me because they're like, hey, like you can talk like if you need to. And I'm like, just we're fine.
It's
Like
fine.
we're good. So they kind of get the gist that I don't want to like openly talk about it. And they
Sure.
text me. We're sitting right beside each other.
Okay.
They text me and they're like, hey, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but you can. And I just like sit there for a second. I'm like, I take a deep breath and I just text back, I'm pregnant.
Oh my God.
And I see the reaction on their face, like the
Right.
shock. You kind of see almost like the blood drain of like,
Yes.
gosh, didn't think it was going to be that.
You like thought maybe you broke up with your boyfriend or something.
Right, right. And so I kind of just get up, turn around and walk down the hall and they follow me and they're just like, you don't have to say anything and just kind of like let me cry again,
Right.
and just feel everything that I've literally just found out. And
Right.
so of course, like more people are kind of walking in and they're seeing me and, I'm not talking about it or anything, but um yeah, that was the first person I told and that was really the only person that knew for a very long time. But I kind of start to become aware like, okay, like you knew there were certain things you were going to have to give up. So for
Right.
example, like I had a leadership position in this fitness health group that I was in. And so I'm like, you can't really very well do that, while
Yeah.
you're pregnant. And so um I had to tell, the leadership group that I was in. And that was a difficult conversation, but they were all very supportive. And I remember just thinking,
Awesome.
like, why? Like, why
Yeah.
are you guys so happy about this? Like, I'm
Right.
not almost,
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling very abnormal, very strange to me. And so I kind of just piece by piece, like I kind of start telling people.
Right.
But even then, there are a bunch of people that they're speculating, like they do not know.
Right.
And so I distinctly remember this one other friend who I had, who I really, really trusted.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't quite bring myself to tell her though, because I was so ashamed. And so
Right.
the other friend that I had in AU Singers that I did tell, they were like, do you want me to tell her to just make it so you don't have to have that conversation? I was like,
Mhm.
yes, you can do that. And so they tell her, and which I say this, we're good now after
Yes.
this has
Y'all have moved
happened, but
forward.
but they tell her and she proceeds essentially to anybody that asks like what's going on with
What's
me,
wrong with Charlton?
because at this point I have gotten married and so people kind of are speculating like, is she pregnant?
So they're
And
wondering, like, man, that was fast.
yes. And
Yeah.
so she kind of essentially like people would come to her and like, hey, is Charlton pregnant? And she would kind of like,
Ugh.
well, and not
Ugh. I can't
confirm or
say
deny.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, which essentially
It tells you exactly what
like
you
it
want to hear.
tells. Yeah, yeah. And so we've had to have a conversation since then. And, like I said, we're good. But I remember that just being like, oh gosh, like I was supposed to be able to tell everybody like in my own time when I wanted to. And I
Hmm.
remember I felt like in a lot of instances that was robbed from me because even in my
Absolutely.
extended family, like my dad and his happiness was just like, well, Charlton's having a baby. So
Right. He's just like blabbing everywhere. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because
So I
he's
remember
excited.
feeling like at every corner, like I never got to control the narrative of like
Yeah.
how people found out, like
Yeah.
people just found out.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like very upset about that.
Oh, I can totally relate. I mean, I remember my grandparents, I flew home to tell them. And by this point, everybody had known, but my grandparents were like
Mhm.
second parents to me. And I was terrified to tell them, but my cousin had already told them. They already
Mm.
knew. I remember, I'll never
And you're
forget it.
like, backstabber.
I'm like, no. I'm like bawling, crying. I can barely get the words out.
Yeah.
They're sitting on the couch, and my grandma just stopped and she looked at me and she's like, we already know. And I was just
Yeah.
like, wait, that's not fair. Like, first of all, I've been
Yeah.
dreading this moment for so long and you've already known. But you're
And
right.
it's
Like, you missed that opportunity to control that narrative.
And it's kind of like a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you're like, I'm incredibly grateful that I don't have to say it. Like I
Right.
don't have to, because there's something about just saying like I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Like in
The
those times, like
shame. Yeah.
it feels so shameful. It's so
Hmm.
difficult. It's a really hard conversation to have.
Absolutely.
And so there's like this gratefulness and gratitude of, okay, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But then there's also like, you've taken this from me. Like you've stolen this aspect of my story, which
Yeah.
really should have been in my hands to control. And you've
Exactly.
taken that away, and now I don't have it anymore, and I can't get it back.
Exactly. And so moving forward, how did your sorority and everybody else on campus react? Were they pretty, kind and
I
accepting?
didn't give it an opportunity to.
Love this.
I was like, I do not want any shame, any judgment. Like, I remember thinking, because we had like these, quote unquote rituals of like when a
Right.
girl would get engaged or something. I'm like,
Right.
I doubt they have one for when somebody gets knocked up. Like, they're
No.
not gonna do it. I just thought that I was like, they're not gonna do anything to celebrate me. They're not gonna be
Mm.
happy about this. And so I didn't give him an opportunity to like
Okay.
speak into anything. I just
Sure.
dropped.
Yeah. Which, you know what, I can understand because the flip side of that is you really don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you
I've
don't.
heard women who have been fully supported by their sororities and others are essentially kicked out, like asked to go
Yeah.
early alum. They don't know what to do with you. They
Yeah,
don't
that
want
was your
that.
experience, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, they really tried to push me into a corner saying, "Oh, you didn't sign a piece of paper, so you're kicked out." But
Hmm.
really, those are fines. Like in the Greek
Right.
world, I think it would blow people's mind to know what all we pay for when you sign up to be a
Oh, there's
sorority.
so much.
There's so much. And if you don't do things on time, they fine you extra money, but for my story, they were just like, yeah, you're getting kicked out for not signing this paper. And then I had to have a meeting with I forget what you call them. They're not our house moms. They're kind of like
But yeah, yeah.
they're
Like
our
the
person
chapter
that's in
mom.
charge. Yeah, like a
Yeah.
chapter representative and having this conversation with her. And she was old school. So she was like, you made decisions that put you in the situation that you're in right
Hmm.
now. And we don't stand behind that. And meanwhile, I'm thinking of like our
You're
sorority
like, wait,
creed that
what?
says we're sisters forever through thick and thin. And I'm like, this doesn't
Right.
make sense. Except if you
Which
get pregnant.
Right. It's like, oh, but here's this one exception we didn't tell you
Yeah,
about.
we didn't
Which I
talk
will say, I had our chapter mom reach out to me. I
about.
didn't
Right.
have her reach out to me. She reached out to me
Yeah.
later, like many years later, and she
Oh,
essentially was like, "Hey, we would have supported you through this. Like, I
wow.
understand, and I'm assuming this is why you dropped, but if you ever
Right.
want to like go early alum and still be
Yeah.
technically a part of the sisterhood, like you can, and here's
How
how."
sweet.
Yeah,
How
super sweet of
sweet.
her.
Oh my
Love her.
gosh. Meanwhile, I see our assistant chapter mom at all of like the baseball events in Auburn because our kids are the same
Give her
age. And
like a
it's just
side
like,
eye.
it's like awkward. I'm like, yeah, I was that girl in the sorority that got pregnant and we have kids the same age and you're
Like,
a
by
lot
the
older
way,
than
you
me.
basically gave me so much reason for shame.
Yeah. So here I am. We're our kids are on the same teams. And yeah, you learn to move forward. You learn that, you know what, not everybody's going to agree with the decisions that you make.
Hmm.
And you've got to figure out what plan you want and why you want it. And you just move forward. And a lot of that shame that this is the reason we're having these conversations is we want to stop this shame and stigma. Like
Yeah.
it is a topic that we don't get to talk about often, a lot of times because women are unwilling to talk about it. It's
Yeah.
it's us. Like we choose not to share the narrative.
Yeah. And I think
And
it's because too, like society in a sense for a very long time had constructed that narrative of this is
Yes.
not okay.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether you feel like it is or it isn't, and it should be okay for us to at least have a conversation and for that person who's going through any particular
Yes.
experience to be okay with their circumstances.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so shameful and it feels so taboo. And I remember distinctly thinking like, gosh, like there's nobody else on campus that's pregnant right now. And of
Yeah.
course, I mean, like there's 30,000 other students. Like the odds are pretty high that somebody's got a kid or walking around with a baby or something. But
Yes.
yeah, it's that mindset of like nobody else is experiencing this. And it's a
Yeah.
lot more common than
It is
people
so much more
realize.
common. And there's got to be a place where these women can come to because it does happen,
Absolutely.
whether you are for unplanned pregnancies or not. Like, I don't think anyone is like, yes, pro unplanned pregnancies. But the
Right, like
reality is
have
they
those babies
happen.
whenever you
Yeah. Like, regardless of that, they happen. And it's
yeah.
not, I've yet to hear a woman on the podcast have an unplanned pregnancy and be like, that is exactly what I wanted. It's like,
I wanted to just unexpectedly get pregnant. Like,
it
no, that's not the
happens.
story.
No, not at all. And so we've got to come together as a society
Yeah.
and rally around these women that it's happening to and help get them to the next level. So
Yeah.
you kind of talked about not knowing anybody on campus. How do you hear about baby steps?
So, in all of my, I thought I had it figured out, I thought I had a plan. I did not, there are still things I'm like, I did not know how to do this. And so, one of those things was once I decided I was going to stay in school, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what's next. And so,
Right.
the next step for me is an internship. And so, in all of my ignorance about how to do things, I am basically emailing the internship professor and I'm like, point period blank. I do not know what to do. I do
Right.
not know how to even
Help.
find an internship. Like,
Right.
help. Do you have a list you can send me of places I can look at? And so he sends me a, albeit very short list. And it essentially has like six, I think, business names and organization
Mhm.
names on it. And he's like, you can start here. And I'm like, great. It'll
Wow.
probably be one of these if they'll take me. And so about halfway down the list, I look and I see baby steps. Now, keep in mind, at the time that I'm doing this, I mean, I think I haven't even had a meeting with an OB yet. Like my pregnancy
Right.
hasn't even been confirmed. This is
Gotcha.
very early on.
Okay.
And so I look down the list and I'm like, I see baby steps and I'm like, what is this? And so I, of course, go to the website. Right across the top, I see have your education and your baby. And I, of
Mm.
course, like I'm breaking down. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
This is it.
exactly what I needed.
Oh,
It's like a lifeline. Like it is
yes.
it's relief. Like
Yeah.
there's something for someone like me.
Yeah.
And so I, of course, fell out the internship. And I think like one of the last things or something is like, do you have anything you want us to know? And I'm like, by the way,
I
I
love it.
just found out I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Don't feel like I'm trying to take advantage of you or,
Right.
anything, but I like if you need it to truly just be a strict like internship relationship, it can be. And
Right.
of course, like Michelle
Yeah.
and everybody was like, no, like whatever you need. Like they're so kind. They're so nice. And
So
they were so
cool.
willing to just, you need an internship? Cool. You want to stay for another semester and intern again? Cool. Like,
Yeah.
whatever I needed, they were so happy to meet that need.
That is so cool. And really a full circle moment for you to go on and get your master's from UAB and then
Yeah.
come to work for us. I
Yeah.
mean, it just gets me so giddy and excited because, yeah, we have so many similarities. Our stories are so similar. And there, nothing quite beats that real full circle moment to use your story to
Mhm.
impact generations. And with your, degree in marketing and what you're doing for baby steps, you have that ability.
Yeah. Well, and the original thought was when I got into communication, I was like, okay, I want to teach communication. I want to
Mm,
instruct about this because I just love the classes, right? Like I love
sure.
that aspect. And so that was originally why I went and got a master's because at the time Camden, I was probably 6 months old when I
Okay.
graduated. So, very fortunately, short period of time where he was actually like physically around
Right.
that I'm still doing school. And at
Yep.
that point, I'm like, okay, like a master's will be much more flexible. I can kind of at least like work during the day
Right.
and he can go to daycare and then I can go take classes and get my master's and it's only 2 years. I can quickly kind of move through it and it won't be a big deal. And so I go get my master's from UAB. And of course, I'm thinking the whole time, like, I'm just going to teach, I'm going to teach, I'm going to teach. And I start, as I'm getting my master's, teaching, as a graduate teaching assistant. And I very quickly am like, oh no, these children,
Oh, no, no, no,
these
no, no.
college students are not it.
This is not where it's at.
And so I kind of then am like left having to very quickly again like pivot and well, okay, we're getting a master's. Like, what are we gonna do from here? And so I start going into marketing just kind of on a whim, like because of my internship with Baby
Sure.
Steps, thinking, okay, well, I did a little bit of, that kind of stuff with them, and maybe like there's something to this. And
Yeah.
so I start getting into the industry and really figuring out, what I'm good at, what I enjoy, what I like. And it just it works out. I hear from, I think it was Sarah contacted me one day and
Hmm.
she texts me and she says, "Hey, like, are you happy at your job?" And I'm like, funny you ask. Funny that you should
Well, you got
text me
something
on this
available?
this particular day. And so yeah, it just working for Baby Steps now, like it really is a very full circle moment, but it's very rewarding, like knowing where I've come from,
Mhm.
what I've been through to now be able to be on the other side and just like even in some capacity, like whether what I do impacts these women in a small way or a large way, like in some capacity, just being a help to them in that situation, like it's so meaningful to me.
Yes, and you're so perfect for it
Oh,
because
gee, thanks.
you're so welcome. Not to build you up even more. But like with the marketing piece of the nonprofit, it is just so important that it's being seen through the eyes of somebody who's experienced it. Like
Yeah.
that is just such a pivotal aspect of Baby Steps because
Mhm.
you've lived it, you've breathed it, you've conquered it, and you have
Yeah.
the ability to take that, put it in our marketing so that these women who are experiencing this on college campuses really across the nation now can say, "Oh my gosh, like I feel connected to this content." And
Yeah.
you do such a great job at creating that.
And I even remember like being an intern and at the time, I mean, this really is way back when Baby Steps started. I think the doors had just been open. It
Mm.
was literally me and one other student mom. I remember being so relieved that like, hey, I'm not alone. Like there is somebody
One
else
more
here on
girl.
campus that has a pregnancy just like me. And
Yay.
I remember like just it was so good to be able to like kind of bounce that experience
Yeah.
off of this staff because there were so many things that were still unknown as far as like what does a student mom need? What is a student mom experiencing? Like who are you
Right.
talking to? Like what are you
Yeah.
doing? And so I remember even like walking through with the staff like okay, here I told like some teachers and this was my experience and this is what
Right.
happened and I was sent to like the office of accessibility for
Yep. Same
being
here, girl. They
pregnant.
didn't know what to do with us.
No, they don't. And it just, I remember, being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to know about this. Like, do I get a maternity leave? Like, because
Right.
I was taking summer classes so that I could get ahead. And of course, I didn't want to lose that. And so my baby was due in July, and I think he was due the exact same day that I had a midterm.
Yep.
And I remember talking to the professor and being like, I mean, I can take it earlier. Like, I can take it like in the hospital or something. And he's like, no.
But
But like,
what's funny is they don't come to us with a solution either. Cause
no.
that was the same thing. I had a midterm or it was a
Yeah.
final and I was like, "Hey, my due date's there." And he was like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah. And of
when
course
would you
it's a
like me to
guy.
take
Like, it's
this?"
always a guy.
It's always the guy. And he was like, he was a grad student. And of course he's even more no idea,
Right.
no
He has
clue.
no idea.
He's like, and I'm like, well,
Well, I can't have a baby. I think, and I'm thinking about this now. It's so funny. I think I worded it as like, as much as I would love to just have a baby and turn around and take a final
right after,
like, I'm happy to do that for you just so I can maintain this class.
Please.
Because I think it was a required class at the time too. I think it was one of those like I had to have.
Exactly.
And if I didn't pass it, then I wasn't going to get my degree. And so I was like, I mean, I'm happy to do whatever I can, but I don't really know how this works. And nobody could tell me. Nobody could sit there and say like, hey, you need to go talk to this person on campus, or you have this available. You can take this so you can medically like have your, like, I didn't know. And nobody told me like, you get this explicit amount of time in between having your baby before you've got to go back and things are due. Like, I was still thinking, okay, like this is the due date. So of this assignment. So this is when it's got to be done,
Yes. And it's just the best part. And I think the most rewarding aspect of our jobs is being able to like break those barriers. There's just something so powerful about seeing a barrier that you have faced personally and other women are going to face and are facing today. There is a college girl waking up today, taking a pregnancy test, and it's positive. And she probably has no resources on her college campus to help her get through that.
And they're directing her to the Office of Accessibility.
And they're telling her she's disabled. There's not a concrete path or answer or way to handle this situation. And we have the honor and privilege of creating that path for these women, which is so cool because we're going to look back being 80 years old and just grandmas.
Like, hey, I did that. I have
and look at this. Yes. Like our voice mattered. These voices on this podcast matter, and they are going to make changes that are literally going to impact generations.
And gosh, like if I can even speak to a student mom, maybe you've just found out you're pregnant.
Absolutely.
Maybe, I will say like, please don't do what I did. Please don't beat yourself up. Like it really is okay. Like you're going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. You don't have to be your own worst enemy in this. And gosh, like that's one thing that I really wish I could take back for myself is there are really, even if there are people who don't support you in this situation, even if there are people who will walk away, which there will be, like that's just the nature of the situation. Like you don't have to inflict the judgment, the shame, the stigma, all of it on yourself as well. You can be a supporter for yourself and you can encourage yourself to do so much more because you are capable. You are going to get it done. And I just hope that in and of itself, like if anybody takes anything away from this, like I hope that is a source of encouragement for somebody.
I love that so much. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story and encouraging our listeners. And
oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. We'll have to do this again sometime.
We'll have to do it again.
Maybe our listeners will hear from me again.
Oh yes. We have something cooking. So it's not going to be the last time you hear from her, but
yeah. So if you thought you were getting rid of me, shing again.
Well, thank you to all of our listeners for just listening to this podcast, being the advocate, being the hands and feet for baby steps out there in your community. And if you have any topics, any questions, anything you want us to dive into in this podcast, please leave it in the comments below. And we hope to have you back for another episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. Do you want to be a part of an organization that is the first of its kind to empower student moms? Your support can impact generations to come. Consider making a financial contribution at babysteps.org.